Yeah, so thanks for everyone for giving it a go and tuning in. So for those of you that don't know me, a few words, a bit of background. So I'm the founder of this group. I run it alongside Dom Carlo here, and I also run a company called RecWorks, which is a tech recruitment company. So at RecWorks, what we're all about is trying to find ways that recruitment can be a force for good in the tech industry beyond just getting people jobs. And what that means is that we're not just about trying to find you your next job, but we want people to find a career that they really love, or to get more people to find a passion for what it is that they do, and then try and help people really go all in on that. So to give you a bit of a taste of what we do and what we've done, we've built communities of over 10,000 people. We've run over 800 learning-focused events, and we've made over 3,000 mentor introductions. And the idea is to do it all for free, or at least free for you guys, free for the candidates. So how it works is we're paid to find talent by the companies, usually developers, and then we take a chunk of that money and drive that back into community initiatives like this. So this year we've been doing something a little bit differently, and we've been building these ladder groups and trying to bring people together on the same kind of learning path, the same ladder. The aspiring speakers was the first one that we did, and so it's gone well. So we've now had 50 new people on stage so far. But what happened? We ran our first event and we had 100% men turn up, and then we ran a second event and had 100% men turn up again. And at that point, we realized that we needed to do something different. So Dom and I put our heads together, and since then, every single event that we've run has had representation from women. So yeah, so it's been kind of good progress. I think we also we've run, I don't know, eight or nine of these Q&A events as a way to try and drive new people to get involved. So that's what we're here to do, to get you guys to see Jemima. So I got introduced to Jemima through an event or a community that we organised called the Front Engineers, and it was awesome. We connected just before the event and had a bit of chat, and I think you had huge earrings on, if I remember rightly. But she sort of instantly made everyone feel comfortable with her presentation. I thought it was great. So I thought we just had to get her back. So Jemima, welcome to today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I've been looking forward to it since yesterday because I thought it was yesterday. So this is great.
Okay, so Jemima, could you just do me a quick favor then, and just give us an idea how many presentations you've run, how deep into it you are, and then maybe what got you started in the first place?
I was just counting actually because I had to count yesterday. I have done 24 talks this year. So that's fun because I thought I was only going to do 12. I was like, all right, I'm going to do one talk each month for 2020 and that's it. Because my plan was to travel. So I was like, I'll do one talk in a different country. So that's like 12 countries for the year. And the pandemic was like, no. And I was like, okay. So now I've done 24 talks. They've mostly been virtual. I've only had like one live talk. But yeah, it's been a lot of, can you guys see my screen? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? It's been fun.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
So what led to it then? What led to you doing your first one? You wanting to do 12 talks? What sort of kicked you off?
Well, actually, it was sometime last year. I think when I first got into when I first got into tech, I was self-taught. I didn't have like a community or anything. I didn't even know there were people like ask questions. Like if I had a problem with something, I was learning from textbooks. I didn't know I could find things online. I didn't have good internet because I was a student and I was staying in a dorm. We did not have free Wi-Fi, so it was a whole thing. And then I think a couple of months after I started learning, I found like this first meetup. It was the Google Developers Group meetup, and I went for it. And they had all these speakers, and we are talking about tech things, and then they gave us like free T-shirts and food. And I was like, what? This is a thing? I can go to some place and just get free clothes? Wow, okay, doing this. So I started attending a bunch of meetups. Like every other Saturday, I would attend one meetup. And then there was this one meetup I went for. It was this Microsoft Teams, something, some kind of Microsoft group anyway. And then I know I was in the audience, and then I was on my laptop. I was working on some project that I was working on because I like to look cool and code in public. It was a thing I used to do back then. And then one of the speakers, they were like, oh, is anyone a front-end developer here? I need someone to help me with this thing that I'm doing, that I'm presenting. And I was like, I'm a front-end developer. And he's like, well, come on up. And then I went to the stage, and then I was helping him. He just wanted to present some form or something. So he was like, could I just like whip up a HTML form? So I did that. And then later, one of the organizers came to meet me, and they were like, oh, hey, we're having another event at the end of next month if you want to speak there. And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? And then it was so funny because like it was a Microsoft event, and then they were like, "Oh, I could just give a presentation on like front end stuff." And then at that point, I had like maybe 6 months knowledge of web design and stuff. So I was like, "Okay, I'm going to give an introduction to HTML because that's what I know. I know like HTML and CSS." So I prepared these slides on like introduction to HTML and CSS. I prepared them for like 3 weeks. I had like so many gifts and everything. I was like, "Yeah, this is gonna be awesome." And I sent it to the guy, and I was like, "Okay, this is a talk." And it's like, "Oh, actually, it's a Microsoft event, so we need something like related to Microsoft technology. Could you do something on ASP.NET?" And I was like, "What's ASP.NET?" Now, this was 1 week to the event, so I was like, "Okay, sure, that's doable." So I literally went to the ASP.NET page and I found a tutorial on the ASP.NET page on how to set up ASP.NET, and I just like kind of created slides based on that. And that was my presentation. It was 7 minutes. And then I was like, "Oh, I was gonna do a demo, but then I don't have like C sharp set up on my laptop." And somebody in the audience was like, "I have C sharp, you can do the demo." And I'm like, "That's fine. You don't need to put yourself out on my account." So yeah, it was 7 minutes. And it was so funny because at the same event, some other person was also giving a presentation on ASP.NET. But now they had been programming with .NET for like 3 years. So they had a lot of material and a lot of slides. And I was there like, huh. Interesting. This is what that is supposed to look like. So it was just so funny, but I had fun with it. I had fun with the presentation aspect. I realized I like the feeling of like speaking in front of people and explaining knowledge. And I was like, you know what? Next time I'll talk about something I actually know, and then we'll avoid all of this. But yeah, that's how I got started, and it's just been straight on from there.
Wow, how about that? I think that's true, isn't it? You can see you had fun with it, and you seem
Yeah.
to have fun with the front engineers event. Like I before every event that we run, I tend to have a little kind of green room, and I'll talk to people, how you feeling, is everything okay, and maybe a little bit about how they got started and that kind of thing. And typically, even the most experienced presenters seem to be, like really charged, like if you shake a can of Coke or something like that. That's how it feels. And me personally, I open events, and that's how I feel. But speaking to you, and you're just seeing like having fun, laid back, and I think it's such a good thing to try and bring out. Yeah, I don't know, I don't quite know how, and if I can, but yeah, I think that's such a, if you can achieve that, to go into these presentations having fun with it, it's a great way to look at it. Okay, so just to confirm that, right? Just to make sure I got this right. So you prepared your slides to give a presentation on web design, something you could talk about. 1 week before the event, they say no, it has to be on Microsoft stuff. So you think ASP.NET, and you have 1 week to prepare on something that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
How about that? So how did you get feedback from this presentation that you did?
I did not. No,
You
I
didn't.
did not.
Okay.
I didn't get feedback from anybody. I didn't
Okay.
ask for feedback because I
No.
didn't even want to know. I was like, you guys, if you have, keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
I did not like the presentation, so I don't want to know what anybody else thought. Yeah, it
Fine.
was yeesh.
But it got you off the mark, right?
It
And
did.
it got
It
you
did.
started. But I think, I think this introduction to something is something that comes up a lot from people we've spoken to, that it's a really good way to get started. A lot of people, I'm sure, that were there knew nothing about ASP.NET, and you just kind of took all that week's worth of learning that you did and made it 5 minutes, and now they know, now they're off the mark. I think it's a great way to get started, a great way to look at it. So yeah, nice. Okay, so one of the questions that came up. So basically, when, as you all know, when you signed up to the event, you entered in some questions. One of the questions that came up, the most popular question, and the most popular question that we get whenever we run these events, is how do you choose topics? So how do you decide what you want to talk about when you're preparing or about to give a new event?
Yeah, when I had start submitting, like literally when I first started with speaking at events, it was very informal. Like I'd probably know a friend who was running something, and they'd be like, "Oh, do you want to speak here?" And I just go and like give. It wouldn't even be a talk; it'd just be like speaking to the audience about my tech journey or whatever. But then when I started submitting call for papers, it's like you have to have an abstract and a description. I have to know like your title and everything. So what I did was that I went through speakers I knew, like Iria Derenoko, for example. So I went through her slides. I went through some other slides, people like Moe and people who had been speaking at events, and I saw the topics they were speaking on. And then I went through like popular topics. And then from these topics, I came up with a list of topics that I was interested in, things I wanted to learn more about, or things I already knew about. And I kind of came up with like, so a lot of my talks right now have like common themes. So I'd usually speak on like accessibility or React technologies or web design trends, because these are things that I'm interested in knowing, or things that I know a lot about, or things that I'm interested in learning. And I kind of just like structure my whole talk around it. So basically, I have to have interest in the topic, or I have to have like enough understanding of the topic that I'm able to explain it to somebody else. And then it's just like coming up with a catchy title, because sometimes I like my topics to rhyme or to be punny. And then, yeah. I just go on from there, and then I come up with the abstract. But the abstract is usually just like, so for my abstract, I just like tell my friend what the talk is about, and then that would be the abstract. And then for the description, I kind of go in more on like what I would cover in the slides, or what the audience could get out of the talk, or the level of developer that the talk is suitable for, and then stuff like that.
Okay, great. Okay. Oh, I should say, by the way, if anybody wants to, if anyone has any questions that you want to throw at Jemima, then please do, or just add them onto the chat box there, or send them to me directly if you'd like them to be anonymous, and I can ask on your behalf. But okay, so going back through that, so you wanted to speak, and to try and figure out what kind of topics to talk about. You looked at what other speakers that you knew, other speakers that you respected, and liked what they did. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yep, that exactly.
Okay. And then you sort of wrote what, like a list of topics, and were just like, yeah, not as interested, but these two, that could be something I'd develop. Okay. Where did you find the talks that you went through? Was it just at other conferences that were happening?
Yeah, so most of the speakers, they have like a list of talks they've given. So like usually on their websites, they will include a list of talks that they've given, or they will include on their Twitter, they include like links to slides for their talks. So basically there's just like a place where they keep a list of their talks, and that's usually what I go through. So yeah, I think most like Noticed is a site. There's some of them put their talks on Notion, some of them put it on their own personal website. So there's always like a list of links. And then also for certain conferences, I would go through previous editions of the conference and see the types of talks that were accepted at previous editions. And then that would give me like an idea of the kind of talk I would want to do at that conference. So yeah, it's mostly just like online records.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's say now you've kind of gone through 20 or so different talks, and you've narrowed it down to web design trends. I think you mentioned, and accessibility or something like that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is a huge area that you could cover there. You could create 30, 40, 50 different kind of talks within this big space, right? So let's say you're writing a book on this. How do you pick the chapter that you want to talk about specifically? How do you find your unique angle within
I
this
usually
subject?
relate it to the conference. For example, I have like 5 different talks on accessibility. So there's like accessibility in relation to JavaScript, or with React components, or HTML accessibility, or CSS accessibility, or just like understanding accessibility in general. And then depending on the conference, you just submit. So if it's a JavaScript conference, obviously I'll do like accessibility with JavaScript. If it's just a front-end developers conference, I tend to do more of like HTML and CSS. Sometimes I speak at like, so sometimes groups just have like beginner level conferences, like it's just like a small meetup trying to explain one topic to beginners. So for things like that, I usually just do like a general understanding web accessibility, so nothing too specific. So usually I just tailor my talks to the conferences. So I'll have a list of ideas of which talks I want to give, or like how I can break a certain concept down into different talks. And then I just like select which conference I should go to.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I heard Neil Ford refer to it as a jeweler's hammer, where the way that jewelers use a hammer to sort of break up a complicated topic into 2 separate ones, and so they kind of try and narrow it down. Do you have any advice on how to do that? Like again, just to try and, once you've picked this accessibility for JavaScript as an example, how do you get a foothold on that kind of material where you can start to think, how do I get my message across? How do you find your message within it?
So usually it depends on like the things I write. So when I was looking for accessibility with JavaScript, I was like, okay, what accessibility problems do I think JavaScript has? And I was like, okay, so probably since a lot of pages these days are based on JavaScript, a lot of times you need to like change information on the screen, for example. And how do you communicate that to your users in an accessible way? People who rely on screen readers, for example, does the screen like update the screen reader every time it's changed, or are you just changing content and your like screen screen readers are not aware that the content is being changed. So I was looking into a way to talk about writing JavaScript in a way that's unobtrusive and it's also accessible to screen readers. And then there are like so many articles online, but then so what I do is whenever I think of a point, I usually just write code on it. So I'll write like a demo or something. I'll create a small component and I'll be like, okay, so how do I make sure that this component is accessible? And then I just put in the code in a way that makes it accessible and I test for accessibility and I tab through it or I go through the component with a screen reader or I turn off the I put like opacity 0 on my web page and I see if I can still like navigate the page easily. So it's a lot of like demo work. And then most times at the end of my slides, I do include like a link to these demos I've created so people can go through the code and see how that works. But then sometimes if it's like a theoretical talk that doesn't involve a lot of demos, I end up reading a lot of articles or watching a lot of videos from people and previous talks that people have done, and then I come up with my own points, so I come up with ways that I can present this point so that people can understand them in the best way that I can explain them. And then I just build my slides up from there.
Okay, cool. So a lot of research to figure out what's already out there, what's there, and then trying to find your point within it, but also putting yourself as a user, as you know, to see the problems for yourself, find them, and think about how you solve them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. If anyone else has any questions on topic selection or anything like that, it feels like it's covered it from what I wanted to know. But if anybody has anything, then just whack the questions up there. So, prep. How to prep for your first speaking engagement. This was a question that somebody submitted. Bear in mind, I recognize some of the names, so I know some of the names here have done 1, 2, or 3 talks. I don't recognize others, so I'm going to imagine that at least one person out there is thinking, I really want to talk and I don't know how to kind of do it and I'm a bit nervous about it. So now let's say we've given some ideas on how to find a topic choice and some loose ideas of how to build that up into what might be a talk. How do you prep? So if you've got your next talk tomorrow, you know, or next week, what would you do to get yourself ready for it?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing is to definitely confirm the talk. Like if it's like a talk they have accepted, then you're fine. But if they just give you like a blank slate and they're like, oh, just come up with your talk, don't build your slides for 3 weeks and then confirm the talk 1 week to the event. Try and get confirmation on the topic before you start preparing. Then once you have confirmation on the topic, so whenever I'm creating my slides, I usually just have a template. So I would do like the title and then an introductory slide and then a link to resources slide. I will break down the talk into sections. So I don't have any content yet, but I know that, okay, I want to talk about, if I'm doing web design trends, for example, I'll be like, okay, I want to talk about web design trends like in 1997 and then trends in 2002 and the trends 2005. So I'll have each section in my slides. If you need GIFs or anything, I actually do a lot of my GIF research at the beginning because I like to be funny first and serious later. So I put on my GIFs first and then I get to, I have like a nice outline. So then sometimes I write things down or I scribble them in my phone because a lot of times before I do a talk, like ideas come to me during the day. So I just like always write them down. And then I'm like, okay, this sounds good. I'll figure out where to put it in the slides later. So yeah, coming up with your slides is just a lot of like having outlines and knowing how you want the talk to go, not necessarily like having the content yet. Because for me, content is one of the most like bothersome parts because like it's a lot of figuring out how to, because it's slides and it's not like an article, for example. So I'm not trying to bombard people with information, but at the same time I want to pass across enough information that they can understand what I'm talking about. So it's a lot of arranging stuff like that. And no, Google, I didn't call you. What? A lot of arranging stuff like that and coming up with, Google is so weird, and coming up with like how you want the slides to look. And then from there, I go on to do the research and scribbling. And then once you have your slides kind of done, you want to, if it's a virtual talk, you definitely want to like confirm what virtual environment you'll be using because sometimes you need like different setup. Like some people just use Zoom or Skype, but sometimes you need to like create a new account on a different platform and you don't want to be creating the account like 30 minutes to your talk. You know, you want to confirm if it would be a live talk or a pre-recorded talk, if you're going to have to do a Q&A after, if you have enough time. Like sometimes I end up like double booking conferences and actually have to cancel because I forgot that. And then time zones will trick you because they will say the conference is 4:30 and you're thinking it's 4:30 your time, but then it's 4:30 American time, which is 2 a.m. your time. And now you have to give a talk by 2 a.m., which is great. So, definitely confirm the time zones. And then, just like go over the talks. Like sometimes at this point, I don't really go over my talks, because most of my talks at this point are repeated talks. But then definitely when I start coming up with new material, I will have to do a lot of more going over. So most times I just call up my friends or I'll speak to my partner and I'll be like, okay, could I just like run through this thing with you real quick? And then I would run through my slides with them. And I'll be, okay, so did you understand this? Or did I go too far over this? Or do I actually need this GIF here? Feedback is really important. And they probably notice some things that you wouldn't notice when you were creating your slides, or you would notice some things that you missed out on. Because sometimes I'll be giving my talk and I'll start talking about another point and I'll be like, oh, actually, I should probably just include this point in the slides. So definitely going through that. So yeah, coming up with your content, confirming the technical and like mental details of your talk, going through your slides and getting feedback from people. I think some people like to know like how many people they'll be speaking with or the type of people that'll be in the audience so you can know how to tailor your talk. If you're going to speak into more junior developers, so you can know that it's going to be more of like introductory points, or if you're going to speak into more senior developers, so it's more of just like this best practice. I don't need to explain any concepts or anything like that. So yeah, knowing your audience is also important. Sometimes I like my outfits to match my slides. So if you're that kind of person, you can also pick up a new outfit so it matches your slides and you'll be happy. And then yeah, basically once I've gone through my slides and I've come up with the content and I have gotten feedback and I've gotten a matching sweatshirt or something, I'm pretty much ready for my talk. So yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, you're certainly the first person I think that I've had on here that's talked about outfit selection as part of the talk prep. Although we had May on here before, who was talking about how she wore Star Wars heels to her first event.
I saw them. Yes, I stalked her online and I saw her Star Wars heels and they were adorable. I was like, I don't speak at physical conferences anymore, but once I do, I will get a Harry Potter cape or something and that will be my thing. That will be what I will do.
Brilliant.
I saw Angie Jones as well on Twitter, who was saying that she did three talks in one day online, and she changed her outfit for each talk as well.
So it's important.
It is important. I agree.
Yes, different outfits for different talks.
I'm worried if I got this right. Okay, there was so much that you went through there that I wanted to unpack, but you were on such a run there that I was it was so good. So okay, going back, and I've also seen there's some questions in the chat as well. I'll come to those in just a sec. So just digging a bit deeper into what you were saying there. Firstly, about content, you like to research who's there. I think that's a great shout, and really kind of make sure that you're tailoring that to the specific people, and definitely something that's worth bearing in mind. One thing that you said there was around this having outlines in your talk. So you don't want to worry about the specific content first, but almost to create these frames where things might fit within further down the line, right?
Yep.
And I, just so I can understand, make sure I got this right, would that be like a kind of an introduction and then the main kind of breaking it into 3 or 4 points and then conclusion? Or would you have more specific kind of guideline of a frame of a talk that you're talking about there?
Yeah, most times it does start out as like, so what I have is I have sections and then I have points. So like a section would be, so for my accessibility talks, usually the sections are broken down into what is accessibility, why is accessibility important, how can we ensure that the things we're building are accessible, and like tools for testing accessibility. So across all my talks, regardless of whether it's JavaScript accessibility or HTML accessibility, these 4 sections are like usually the most common. So I usually have those already. And then for each content, so the specific points are what differ across the topic. So it's with the points that I have to be a bit more specific, but it's still not like actual content. It's just like let's say you have your section headers and then you have your main point. So I would have like slides. So it would literally just be like a slide with one line. And maybe the first line would say like, what is accessibility? And then the second slide would be something like definition of accessibility. And the third slide would be like, insert quotes of accessibility meaning or something. So just like one line guides so that when I'm actually making the content, I know what is supposed to go where. So yeah, start with like a general outline and then make it a bit more specific as you go on.
Yeah, okay, that's great advice. Okay, fantastic. So I'm really worried about content first. if virtual, I thought that was really good advice as well. I've not heard that mentioned before, but this idea of really checking in on all the technical details, signing up to accounts, and because so often before events, people try to share screens and then it gets pretty flustering and people have to restart Zoom and do all these different things. And it's exactly the wrong time to be worrying about it when, you know, you just want to be happy and well prepared. So I think that's really good advice. I really like, what is it? You said, be funny first and serious later. Like
yes.
Okay. You talked about practicing talks and making sure that they were repeated. And you also said something which I think, again, we hear from time to time that I think is quite useful. So your talks are used over and over again. They're recycled essentially, right?
Yeah.
How many times would you recycle a talk typically?
The problem is, so when I have a talk idea, I submit it to as many conferences as possible because I'm just trying to get the talk out there. Now, the catch is I'm usually not expecting that many acceptances, but I think at some point I had one topic accepted at 9 different conferences. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't, in all good faith, present one talk 9 times. But then luckily they got cancelled. Not luckily, but yeah, they got cancelled because of the pandemic. So I only had to give that one talk 5 times, which is again slightly better. So yeah, it's not for me. I think like I usually give talks until I'm tired of giving them. At this point, I am tired of giving most of my talks because I can say them like I don't even need to look at my slides. I just know what I'm going to say already. So basically, once I get bored of a topic, I'm less likely to want to give it anymore. So that could be I give the talk 2 times, or I give the talk 5 times, or there are sometimes I have a talk idea and then the talk gets accepted and I'm preparing for the talk. And as I'm generating my content, I'm like, oh, I don't really like this topic. I don't want to do this anymore. But then I've already committed, so I can't really back out. So I'm like, all right, I'll just do this once and then I'll just never submit this talk again. So that has happened sometimes. I have given some talks where I was like, I just do not vibe with this topic. So, you know, it depends on you. I feel like if you feel that you can keep giving a topic and keep on giving a good presentation as many times as you need to on one particular topic, then do you. But for me, like the more bored I get of it, the more whack my presentation is going to be, and I don't want to subject anyone to that. So yeah, it starts taking its toll around like maybe the 3rd to 5th time. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I think it's a common kind of misconception or myth that people feel like you have to create a new event, a new talk every single event, which obviously there's so much work involved in doing. But yeah, we hear this a lot that it is kind of repeating. So yeah. And you also mentioned how you go through your slides with your partner. I assume these are technical slides. Is your partner technical or?
Yeah, they're also technical. So it's real helpful. But sometimes I do like to get for the first talks I did, I gave them to my friends who weren't technical. Like I studied engineering in school, so my friends were all in engineering, but I was the only one really doing like programming stuff. They all did like mechanical or chemical engineering, so it was like a different sort of technical. But I was like, okay, but at this point, you guys understand what I'm talking about? They're like, yeah, we understand. And I'm like, that's all I need. So yeah. Since I know most of my talks now are going to be to people who are already technical, I really just need the opinion of people who are currently technical because there are some concepts I don't need to explain anymore. So it's easier that way.
Understood. It's interesting. I think there's so much use that can come from just you getting it out of your head and off of the page and out the words out of your mouth. You can kind of then learn a lot from doing that. So yeah, okay, cool. I'm going to come and have a look at the questions here. So first question from Ibrahim. How do you manage the process of preparing your talk slides and managing your day job, especially events you are invited to on short notice?
Yeah, that is a great question. I was hoping somebody would ask me that. I have terrible time management. I write all my slides. I finish my slides by like 1 a.m. So I'll be like, okay, I have this talk in 2 weeks. If I start writing my slides now, I can finish it. I'll be like, great. And then it'll be a Saturday and I'll be feeling productive and I'll do my outline and I'll do everything. And I'll be like, this is great. I just need to get content now. And then the talk will be on Tuesday and the Sunday before, I'll be like, frick. And then like 7 to like 1 a.m. and I will just be like complaining the whole time and I will just be adding more content and I'll be like, oh, I hate this so much. Why do I do this to myself? Why do I never learn? And by 1 a.m. I'm like, all right, it's done, whatever. I don't even care. And I go to sleep. And then I wake up really early the next morning and I'm like, okay, no, we have to go, right? So we have to have a good slide. And then in the morning, I like proofread and I add more stuff or I remove stuff or I clean up stuff. And then it's like 17 hours to the conference and then I get my slides done and I'm like, okay, great. Because the thing is, usually I don't do my feedback with the complete slides. I do my feedback with the outline, because then it's easier for me to make changes, because it's not like I have my slides already and now I need to change something. No, I do my feedback with the outline, I present it, and then I know what I need to add or what I need to remove. And then once I have my feedback and I have my concrete outline, it's just like a panic-induced haze of adding content. Sometimes I do get invited to talks on short notice, but then I think by the time I started getting invited to talks, it was by the time I already had all my slides done. Like I had done a couple of talks already. So usually when people invite me, it's like, oh, we saw you give this talk at this conference. Could you also give the same talk at our conference? So I already have the slides. One thing I would say though is if you're going to give talks at a different conference, you should go over your slides and make sure you don't have any like conference related content, because I just gave a talk recently, and as I was preparing the slides, I realized that some of my examples were using a conference name from a different conference. And I was like, oops, my bad. And it was like a live recording, so I couldn't even like say, could we pause? And I was just like, you know what, I will learn for next time. So yeah, if you want to, you can just avoid using conference specific content, but if you know you're going to have to make slides if you have to give the talk again, and like remove all your conference specific content.
I have a question on that. So would you say that you spend less time in that starting out strong in planning, and then there's a compression of panic and complaint? Would you say that the total amount of time you spend is less or more than what you would spend if you did it in a more sort of planned and calm way?
I honestly cannot, because like I don't think I've ever done my slides in a planned way. Like I know what I have is like the planning, it comes to me like as I go across the process of making the slides. So as I'm making the outline and I'm choosing which specific points I want to talk about, I'm doing my research on these points. So and I'm including like links to articles and stuff. So I know like, okay, when I want to read more on this, I can easily reference this. So I think by the time it comes for me to actually put the contents together, it's definitely easier, because not like I have a blank slate. It's just like more work, because once I'm putting content together, it's really a matter of not shoving so much information on the page or choosing like the appropriate aesthetics and everything. I want to make sure that this GIF is perfectly aligned with the text. So it's a lot of like arrangement and placement, but it's less research. So it's more like I have like a bunch of magazine cutouts of what I want to talk about, and I'm just like pasting them in appropriate areas. So it's really the pasting that is the panic induced. But like over the course of the week, or from the moment the talk is accepted, I will do all the research and outlining that I actually need to do, because for me, those are the hardest parts. And then the placement is panic induced haze, and it's fine.
Okay, thank you. So the research is the same regardless,
yeah,
but the panic kicks in at the putting it all together at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just had a few questions in directly as well. The first question: what is the process of submitting a talk like? Okay. So the CFP, would you walk through that?
Yeah, sure. So when I first started going into, because I know there was a point where I started submitting talks to international conferences, because so far a lot of the talks I've been giving, it was just like I said, I would have a friend who was organizing a conference, and then I would just let them know if I wanted to speak, and that'll be that. Or because when I was in school, we had a lot of student conferences, like student meetups and student developer groups. So I would try to speak within that circle. But then when I realized I was leaving school and I was going to move to a new country, I was like, okay, great, now I can give more international talks. So I was like, how do I give more international talks? And I think I just Googled it. Yeah, I Googled like how to be a conference speaker. And then there was some article about like submitting CFPs. And I Googled CFPs, and there was some place, I think it was called CFP Land or something. Or yeah, it was probably CFP Land. And also conf.tech. So conf.tech is this like open source website where people submit their conferences to. And then some of them have CFPs. And then that's where I saw the list of like conferences that were looking for speakers. And there was this particular one, I think it was Women in Tech. It was a Women in Tech group. I can't remember if their name was actually Women in Tech though, but I know that was the first conference I submitted my first talk to. And when I submitted it, I even forgot about it. And the talk was HTML accessibility, or no, HTML accessible by default. Yeah, that was the talk title, and I did the whole abstract. It was like one night, and that was how I learned how to write like abstracts and talk descriptions. And I just submitted it. I just forgot about it, and I was like, meh, I've done it. It's fine. And I think like 2 weeks later, they sent me the acceptance email, and I was like, wait, for real? Like for real, for real? And they were for real, for real. So that was fun. But yeah, the talk was going to be in Berlin and there was no way I could get to Berlin in time. So I was like, meh, but it was always lovely getting accepted. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of finding talks online. Sometimes I would just Twitter is also a really great place to find talks because it may not be as structured as like places that have like fixed CFPs where they are getting a lot of submissions. Like sometimes conferences get up to like 100 submissions and they only have space for 10 speakers, you know. But with Twitter you can just search like looking for speaker or call for papers or something, and there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of local meetups and they aren't really putting them out on like the big aggregator websites, and you could just send them a DM or click whatever. Sometimes it'll be like a Google Docs link that they will include. So searching on Twitter, using sites like CFP Conf.tech. There's also Paper Call and Sessionize. So sometimes I would just Google like Sessionize Front End Conference 2020, and then I would see some conferences that had their call for papers on Sessionize. Same thing with Paper Call. So yeah, it was just like a lot of actually finding the talks online, and then I would just copy. So if you have an account on Sessionize or Paper Call, they allow you submit the same talks without needing to like rewrite your abstract and your description every time, which was really helpful for me because I just be going and be like, click, submit. Where's this conference, Indonesia? Psh, submit. Just like having fun with it. So yeah, it was like more of like finding the conferences first and then Googling them and then tailoring your search based on like the type of conference you want to speak on.
Fantastic, thanks for that. We also ran a recent event on conferences with other organisers of conferences. Again, what you've said there mirrors a lot of what was said. So happy to share that if anyone's specifically interested in conferences specifically there. Okay, so one question that we actually had this in two different ways, but it was around how do you engage your audience when you're giving a presentation. Now, as I said at the beginning, you quite clearly have a very engaging style, like a natural style to you anyway, but do you use any techniques, or like how do you feel confident with this?
Yeah, it really depends on my outfit. If I like my outfit, I am going to love my talk. There was this one time I had this Pokemon sweatshirt and it was pink and my slides were pink and I was just loving that talk. Like it didn't even matter. There was this one point where like my lighting wasn't great or like the sound was cutting off and I was like, I'm in a Pokemon sweatshirt. Nothing can go wrong. So yeah, that was really fun. But yeah, I think the more confident I am with the talk I'm giving, the more like confident I am likely to be when I'm speaking to the audience, because at that point it's coming naturally. Like I'm trying to explain concepts in a way that comes naturally to me, and it's not so much of like stumbling over my words because I'm not quite sure what I'm talking on. And engaging the audience, it's been hard because when I started doing conferences I was speaking to people physically, so I could like look in the audience and see, because sometimes I talk really fast and then if I'm looking at the audience I can tell when they're not understanding me because they can't hear what I'm saying. So I'll slow down or I can make eye contact and like gauge their interest. But online, you can't make eye contact with anyone. So it was definitely, there was an adjustment period where I had to get used to talking to my laptop, regardless of whether I could see people or not. And I was like, you know what? I talk to myself most of the time anyway. So this is pretty much the same thing. I will just get used to it. So yeah, I think for me, the main adjustment period was just like figuring out there is no way to really gauge audience feedback while you're giving a talk during a talk. So for me, it's am I having fun with this talk I'm giving, or do I feel like I am passing my points across in a way that is fun, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to know until the talk is actually over. And then I'm hearing people are saying, oh, thank you in the chat, or there's nothing in the chat, because that happened. So I gave one talk one time and there was no comment at the end. There was no MC that was introducing me. It was literally just on this platform where they were like, it was one of those like really big conferences. So it was like they were having 4 tracks running at one time. So you just go and give your talk. I gave the talk and at the end there was no comment, nothing. I was like, did I just actually talk to myself? I guess so. So yeah, it was definitely harder not knowing how to gauge your audience, but I think it was just like at the end of the day, it's like, do I feel like I gave a good presentation, or as I'm giving the presentation, do I feel like this is engaging or not? And that's really it for me.
I love that line that you just said. Am I having fun giving this talk? Am I having fun with this talk that I'm giving? So how do you do that other than your outfit? I know I'll get myself a pink Pokemon sweater. My little one would absolutely love it. But how do you do that? How can you have fun giving a presentation? Like, have any advice, anything that you do that you
Yeah, that's why I said, like, for me, when I'm making my slides, it's important that I'm funny first and serious later. So sometimes I will have GIFs and then I will be giving the talk and I'll see the GIF and I'll just crack myself up. I'll be like, ah, that was so funny. I know I'm the one that chose the GIF, but still kudos to my sense of humor. So yeah, it's definitely about like, for me, having fun is just like, like putting fun things in your slides, or if you want to have a slide that is pink with confetti background, or if you want to have gifts, or you want to have, like, there was this one point where I ended all my conferences with like cat gifts at the end, because like I had this obsessed with cat phase, and I would just always have a cat gift at the end. It doesn't matter if it was related to the talk or not. And then as I'm going through the talk, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get the cat gift at some point and it's gonna be great. So yeah, just definitely including like things, or like there was this sometimes like the code I write would just be like something funny. Like there was this one time I saw somebody write code and it was like a function to rickroll someone, and I just thought that was hilarious. So I do that sometimes, or like I'll include Harry Potter spells or just things that I like, so that as I'm writing the conference, maybe not everyone will get the reference, but like I'll see it and I'll be happy about it, and then it's just easier to move on to the next slide.
I love this. So you've got all your personal jokes that only you get, so they're like cheering you up as you're going through.
I find it hilarious. Maybe nobody else gets
me.
it, but cracks me up.
I love it. Okay. So that's on engaging with an audience then. Okay, setbacks. Again, this is something that I think not necessarily everyone gets early on. Like when I think people tend to be quite supportive, like when you're first doing your first talks, but I think everyone is nervous of. They're going to say something and get it wrong and slip up, or somebody in the audience, and this does tend to happen, will say, oh, you're wrong, or something. Have you ever had any setbacks like that? Ever had anything?
I've never had someone, but that is one of my greatest fears. One of my greatest fears, like I'll be giving a presentation, a live presentation, and I'll say something, and then like the creator of that thing will be in the audience, and they'll be like, "That's not right," and I'll be like, "Well, what do you want me to do about that? Like, where do I go? Am I going to run off stage now?" So yeah, luckily that hasn't happened yet, but I have had setbacks in that, like sometimes technical setbacks. Like I'm giving a talk. There was one time I was giving a talk, and then for the first 10 minutes I was just going on, and at some point the MC interrupted me and it was like, "Oh, sorry, we can't see your screen. You're not sharing any slides." And I was like, "Oh." And then at some point later in the talk, I literally got cut off. Like my internet went off and I had to like reconnect and start talking again. So like these things, they break your stride, because like you're already going, you're on your roll, and I have to go and start again. But it's just like, I take it as it comes. Sometimes I get questions that I have no answer to. Like I'll give a talk on something and somebody will be like, but I think so. At the beginning, when I first started giving talks, whenever I got questions and I didn't have an answer to, I would like try to bumble my way through it, or I'll try to be like, oh, well, I think that. But now honestly, I'm just like, oh, I don't know. I mean, we could Google it. Yeah, let's Google it. And I would Google it during the conference, and I'll be like, okay, this is what Google says, and that sounds right. Because at this point, I just realized that it's okay to not know everything about the topic you're talking about. Like, it's impossible to know everything about the topic you're talking about. And it's great because, like, you get questions like that, and now you know the answer, so you can even include them in your slides and use them in a later conference. So it's definitely better than trying to bumble your way through it. What other sort of setbacks do I get while speaking? Sometimes I forget what I'm talking about. It happens a lot. I will be talking, I'll be on a slide, and I'll be like, so when you use the what is the name of that thing? And I just do that for like 30 seconds until I remember, or I just say, you know what, I can't remember, but whatever it is, and I skip it and I move on. So I think for me, it was just a lot of learning to take things in stride, like you will mess up things, or things will mess up by themselves, but I can't let that like stop me from giving the whole talk, So just get through it and keep going.
Yeah, this sounds very familiar, this forgetting things, as Dom will probably tell you. And so often in our conversations, when I'm just talking about something, I literally just run off the road and can't remember where I was going, what I was talking about. Interesting. Okay. Have you had any experiences with trolls at all in any way? And have you learned any way to deal with it, or read about or found any techniques of dealing with trolls?
That is interesting. I have seen people talk about trolls, but I have actually never encountered any. Like most of the conferences I speak at, people are just so nice. Like I feel like, why are they being so nice? What is this? Like I get so many like, oh my God, thank you so much. That was such a great talk. Or like people sending me messages on Twitter and LinkedIn telling me how much they enjoyed the talk and everything. And I'm like, what's wrong? Are they lying to me? Like I always get so much positive feedback. I don't know. I feel like because a lot of times they are virtual conferences, it's also easier for the promoters to like prevent trolls, because if you say something bad, they could literally just block you from the platform. You know, it's not like in a physical conference where you'd have to be asked to leave the room or something. So it's definitely, I have not had as much experience with trolls, I wouldn't say. I have read of people's experiences with them, and I do know that it could get like really annoying, especially being a female speaker. I have read, like, I've seen a lot of tweets from female speakers about how like people reach out to them after the talks and they're like, oh, actually, about that thing you said, that I know it was your conference, but I'm going to give you my opinion on it anyway. I've never had that, which is so great, because honestly, I'd probably just block them. I don't know. I'm not a very good direct social person. I do not know how to communicate with people directly sometimes. So blocking is my go-to. If you say anything that I'm not comfortable with, I will block you, and that will be the end of that. Because the internet is not real life, thank goodness.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, we've had a few people that we've spoken to that have had that kind of thing, and exactly what you experienced, or what you talked about there. Sorry, where people have approached afterwards and said, actually, here's something that might help for your next talk, and things like that. And yeah, it tends to happen, but it's great. I think it's really good to hear that you've given a lot of talks and you've not had it once. That just sort of goes to show that it's yeah, there's a lot of nice people out there, and I think that's it. The overwhelming majority of people want to see you succeed, want to hear what you have to say, want to learn things that you know that they don't, and that's, you know, it's largely a positive thing. So yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm hoping I didn't just jinx myself at my next conference. I'm just going to have a bunch of trolls. Well, we'll see.
So I think my final question here, again, this comes up quite often, is around imposter syndrome. Have you ever struggled with it? Have you ever come across it? And if so, how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, I had like a really weird experience with imposter syndrome, because like it wasn't really a thing for me at first, because when I was first starting, I think like my imposter syndrome usually happens when, because it's really like when people tell you you're doing well at things and you're like, oh no, they're lying, I'm not doing well. So when I was first starting out, nobody was telling me I was doing well or I was doing bad. It was just like up to me, you know? Like I would build something and be like, that's amazing. And I'll show my friends, and my friends don't even know like HTML. So they would also be impressed by it. So we're all just, you know, very happy in our own little bubble. And then I started like literally the first conference I submitted the talk to, I got accepted. So like for me, it was just like, I'm great. Wow. But then I started submitting more conferences and getting rejected at some, or getting like, you know, like accepted and then removed from the speaker lineup later because they had to replace me with somebody else or something. So imposter syndrome really crept in at some point when it was like, am I really good at, like there's this thing, it's like, am I actually good at conference speaking, or is it like a diversity thing? Because like I'll get accepted to a conference and then I'm the only Black speaker there, or I'm the only female speaker there, or I'm the only Black female speaker there, and it's like, yeah, I'm really helping you guys check off your diversity checkpoints, aren't I? Is that what this is? But then at a point it's like, and then there's also that thing where it's like, oh, it's not that you're really good. It's just that you're really good at lying to people. So you're really good at making it sound like you know what you're doing, but you don't actually know what you're doing. So yeah, imposter syndrome, it comes in different ways. But how I learned to accept it is just like, I feel like right now it's just like we're kind of siblings. Like there's this like relationship you have with your sibling where they're like, "Hey, dummy," and you're like, "Sup, dummy." You know, like you just kind of accept that is how you guys are gonna be. Imposter syndrome will be like, "You're terrible," and I'm like, "No, you're terrible." Ha. So that's really where I am right now. It's just a lot of. It's like I submit a talk and then it's like, am I going to get accepted or rejected? And I get rejected and it's like, ah well, and I get accepted and it's like, that's suspicious, but okay. But yeah, I think the main thing for me is to not let it actually stop me from doing anything. Like I'm never going to get to the point where imposter syndrome is going to stop me from choosing to speak at more conferences or submitting more talks or applying for opportunities. I don't ever want to get to the point where it's like I actually don't believe that I can do anything, so I don't try. It's like regardless of whether you think you can do it or not, you know, just try and find out. You won't know till you try. So that's it for me.
I love this idea of giving a persona to your imposter syndrome. It's another person that you're like a sibling that you're arguing with.
It's not part of me. It's just like it's
whatever.
Someone else.
I like this. Okay, that is all my questions. Does anyone have questions? Anything that they want to ask while we've got Jemima here?
This isn't really a very serious question after we just talked about imposter syndrome. So So at the weekend, I recorded myself on Zoom giving my talk that's not quite ready yet. And when I played it back, I'm all hands and my eyebrows are raised and it's all very dramatic. And it's like, do you just go with that? Or do you try and
I lean into
hold it in?
I
Okay.
think people enjoy when you're more like excited on camera. Like I've gotten some messages that the person was like, wow, you were really excited during that talk. And I'm like, was I? Okay. Like sometimes I do jazz hands, I do finger guns a lot. Like I'm really into this. So yeah, my hands, like they are part of my presentation. And like I would be so stilted if I could not talk with my hands, because like my body would start moving if I could not express myself with my hands. So yeah, definitely. It's like be expressive, if you want to laugh a lot during your conference, your talks, like as long as you're passing across the information, you don't actually need to like stifle your eccentricities or anything. Just like go with it. It'll be fine. They understand what you're talking about anyway.
Okay,
I don't know.
I was like, where do you put them? Where do you put your hands? I don't understand. You talk with your hands.
Let them run free. They do what they want to do.
Have you seen the excerpt out of Talladega Nights when Will Ferrell is being interviewed and he doesn't know what to do with his hands? And I think I was talking to someone about this recently, and he's like this, and it's completely asynchronous with what he's talking about. And I have a very inappropriate joke to share, that how do you keep an Italian quiet? You make them sit on their hands. So I think maybe we can introduce our Mediterranean side as well and use our hands.
I think I just love, like, when they're doing that Italian impression and they're like, yeah, pizza. I don't know Italian words. It's just, I feel like talking with your hands is great. It's just like it adds character. So actually, what I do a lot of times is that I try to avoid having a busy background because my hands are already flying all over the place. I do not need people like being distracted by stuff at the back. So yeah, it's like I can do like shadow puppets and stuff. So why not have fun with it?
I love it. I spoke to one guy once who always carried a pen, always had a pen. And it does, when you're standing up and giving a presentation, I found that was one thing that somebody said about hands. And it did help, like, kind of just for some reason, occupying one of your hands with something makes it slightly more comfortable. But yeah,
I wonder if we could take that up a level, with the pink Pokemon top, if we could like carry a magic wand or something that represented
Definitely.
our Harry Potter house.
That would be
whatever.
my thing. I will get a wand. I will get a Phoenix Core wand, and I will use that during my next presentation. Honestly, knowing me, I'd probably just end up waving it around a lot and acting like I'm casting spells on stage. But yeah, it could be a try.
Brilliant. Does anyone else have any questions for Jemima at all on her experiences as a speaker, or any advice that you like?
Not a question per se, but I really enjoyed your story about just winging it basically with ASP.NET. Huge amount of respect for that. I'm going to take a leaf out of your book there. I did it slightly for my last lightning talk because it was a little bit last minute, and I think it was my best lightning talk. So maybe there's a thing there,
Maybe there. Honestly, I think what that talk did was that it made it easier for me to give other talks, because I knew I could never give a talk as bad as that first talk because I did not know what I was talking about. It is so hard. Like, at least now I know what I'm talking about. In that first talk, I did not know what ASP.NET was. I did not know its applications. I just knew what I had read on the Microsoft site. And like, I knew how to set up ASP.NET. It was like, hey, you download this thing and then you run this thing. That was what I knew. I did not know the concept or anything. So going forward, it's like, it can never be as bad as the ASP.NET incident. So I'll be fine.
Thank you.
No
Amazing.
problem.
All right, I think we're there with questions then. So Jemima, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I had a funny feeling it would be fun, but yeah, amazing. So thank you so much for all your advice. And yeah, let's keep in touch, and feel free to tune into the lightning talks and see everyone speaking.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay.
I hope you all enjoyed the talk or learned something new. And yeah. Thanks. It was great. I don't know how to sign out on things. Bye.
Do some hand dancing
Thank
or
you.
something. I think we should all end by embracing that.
I love it.
See you, gang.
Cheers,
Go
guys.
top.
Bye.
Bye.